everyone, welcome back to my channel and happy 2023. One of the biggest goals of mine in 2022 was to read more books, and I definitely did that. I got into Goodreads for the first time, which is an app where you can rate books, review books, add your friends, see what they want to read, and also make a book reading challenge for yourself at the beginning of the year, which is exactly what I did. I made my 22 reading goal 12 books, and I ended up exceeding that goal, so I changed it halfway through the year to 22 books. Now, while I did not actually make it to that, I read a total of 18 books in the year 2022, and I figured I'd give you my thoughts and rate each one while I review all the books I read in 2022 without any major spoilers or anything, and then quickly cover my 2023 reading goals for the year. Starting off with the first book I read, it was the 5th book in the Bridgerton series. I started the Bridgerton series after I watched the first season of the show on Netflix. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend. So I finished the first season and promptly started reading all of the Bridgerton series. So I started with the 5th book, To Sir Philip with Love. If I look down, it's because I have a bunch of notes on my iPad here of all the books, because I will forget them if I don't have notes. So yes, so I read To Sir Philip with Love, which is Eloise's story. The series is all by Julia Quinn. What I really loved about this book, I didn't realize when I was reading it, was that some of these characters were in season 1 of the show and they weren't in the books. I didn't like clue into that at that point because the second season of the show hadn't come out yet, but when I watched the second season, I was like, oh, okay, interesting. I'm not sure how they're going to implement Marina Thompson and Philip Crane into that book. Obviously, Philip Crane will be a major part of that season, obviously. I'm curious what they'll do with Marina Thompson and how that will play out. I'm sure everyone who's watched the show is thinking the same thing. I don't know how I felt about the book after. I feel like I was caught up in the Bridgerton series, that I was like obsessed with every single one, that I was like, oh my gosh, every single one is a 5 out of 5. I'm very generous when I give these ratings on Goodreads. Now that I think back on it, especially watching the second season of the show, I feel like Eloise is a little bit different in the books and I prefer her in the show. While her story was her story, I don't know if it was like true to Eloise or the Eloise that I have in my head. So I take it back and I think I rate it a 4 out of 5. But, you know, I love that she found happiness in the end. I mean, every single book ends satisfyingly. And kind of expectedly, every single Julia Quinn book is like very formulaic. At least that's what I've noticed after reading so many of them. But they're super satisfying reads and easy. Like, I just love the romance element of them. They're a little spicy. So if you're into that, I definitely recommend reading the books, especially if you like the show. I think the second book, Anthony's Story, was so much better than the season 2 of the Netflix show. Sorry, that's just what I think. But the show is also very good. Moving on to the second book, When He Was Wicked, which is Francesca's story, also part of the Bridgerton series. I think this was actually my favorite out of all of them, which was really unexpected because I was least looking forward to this one because it's Francesca's story. And if you know the show, Francesca is very much not in the show so much. She's very mysterious. You don't get a lot of her. So I was like not knowing what to expect. And then I ended up being very surprised. Also, I really love a story where it's like one of the characters has had a crush on the other person for so long and they finally get together in the end. It's just so satisfying. I mean, I'm hoping those are not like spoilers because, you know, they're gonna get together in the end. Like, it's obvious in these kinds of books. So hopefully I'm not spoiling too much, but I love that kind of story. And that's probably why, especially this book was my favorite one. And you learn a lot about Francesca, obviously. 5 out of 5, in my opinion. The next one was Hyacinth's story, which is called It's in His Kiss. It's funny because these were so long ago, but I do remember kind of what happens in each. And I loved that this one was like more of a mystery in it. And there was definitely more adventure. Very much unexpected. At the same time, because Hyacinth is so young and that's what I was so used to, it was so weird to all of a sudden have her at a marrying age at the time. So that was a bit weird, but I loved love that it like kept me on my toes the whole book through. I don't want to give too much away, so I'm trying not to go too in-depth on each, but I loved it. I gave it a 5 out of 5. The next book's actually not a Bridgerton book. Me and my friends started a book club, so I took a pause on the Bridgerton books and started reading with my friends, and we read Firekeeper's Daughter by Angeline Boulley. It was definitely a switch up from the Bridgerton series. I had been reading them for so long that I was like so in the romance novel mindset that it took me a second to get into the book, but once I did, I was absolutely hooked, especially because I was reading it with friends. We were reading each part together by a certain date, and then we'd have like a meetup, talk about the book, and then continue on after our meeting. That was especially hard because I think it was the end of part 2. There is a huge cliffhanger, like huge, and I was reading so quickly that I think after the meeting I had read the second part in a day or something crazy like that, and then I had to wait a whole week before we met up again, and I was very good. I did not read ahead, and that was so difficult for me because it's huge. Anyways, so I will leave it at that. Definitely a really killer book. I mean, it is a fictional story, but it's got many elements of truth, so definitely recommend it. I gave it a 5 out of 5. Also, the cover on that book is gorgeous. Okay, jumping back into the Bridgerton series, I read the last book in the main series, which was On the Way to the Wedding, which is Gregory's story. Another one where it's like, oh my gosh, he's so young, how could he be getting married? And I kind of, when I was writing my notes, I was like, why do I forget this one? Because I actually don't really remember fully what it's about. The part that frustrated me in this book was how he found himself in love with someone who I knew that it wouldn't work out. And it was for so long that it became a little bit frustrating as you were reading it. It was interesting that it was kind of a twist. Like, while I said her books are quite predictable, this one did kind of flip it up a little bit. So it was nice that every book was pretty predictable, and this one kind of wasn't. You weren't sure for a lot of it. At least I wasn't. Anyways, I did still give it a 5 out of 5 because I'm such an easy marker, apparently. All right, the next book, I don't even know if I should count it in my books, but I did on Goodreads. It is The Bridgertons, which is a collection of the second epilogues, I'm pretty sure, in each of the books, which I had already read with each book when they finished, which I kind of wish I didn't because some of them kind of spoil the other ones in a way. They're predictable and you know kind of how each one's gonna end, so I guess it's not that bad, but at the same time, maybe I wish I had saved the second epilogues for right after all of the books were done. The reason I did actually read this one was because of Violet's story, which is funny because I don't remember anything about it, not at all. So maybe I should reread it. And I didn't even give it a rating. I think I was kind of disappointed that it was so short, because obviously they're little novellas. Too short. Violet should have had her own book. And then, because I really did not know what to do with myself in terms of what to read next, I was like, okay, let me just read more Julia Quinn, but keep it within the Bridgerton kind of storyline. And so she has a series of Roxby books. So it's this other family, but intertwined with the Bridgerton family. So the first one in the series is called Because of Miss Bridgerton. I really, really like this one. From what I can remember, I feel like the Roxby's ones went kind of quick, even though they were the same length, I'm pretty sure. They whizzed by and now I'm don't even remember them. This one was Billy Bridgerton's book, and I loved her because she was super independent, a little feisty, and she didn't do what others expected her to do, especially in the times, so that's especially why I liked her. She reminded me of Eloise, but even more so, and she stuck to it, I feel like. It's another enemies to lovers kind of story, which I also enjoy. I didn't realize how much I enjoyed that kind of story. I read another book like that later, so I'll get to it. Again, these are just such easy reads if you're into the Regency romance novels. I gave it a 5 out of 5. The next one is called The Girl with the Make-Believe Husband. I feel like I remember this book being all over the place, and I remember being a little bit frustrated to the point where I put it down at one point. I don't know if it was because I was busy or because I wasn't into it as much, but I kept being oh my gosh, Cecilia, tell him the truth, the entire book. From what I remember, she goes to America and she's trying to find her brother who she's lost touch with. He won't reply to her letters, I think. But she actually finds his best friend who is in a coma, and she lies and says that she's her husband. He wakes up and she's gonna tell him, but he's actually suffering from amnesia and doesn't remember anything and completely believes her. So she goes on with it, and that's how the story progresses. And it's like frustrating because the whole time you're like, oh my gosh, tell him, please. And then it ends up being really sweet. I gave it a 5 out of 5, probably because, you know, in the end, I liked it. So taking a break from the Bridgerton universe, I've jumped on another book club pick with some friends, which is called Sorry I'm Late, I Didn't Want to Come by Jessica Pan. It took me ages to get into, I think because I was so stuck in with the Bridgerton universe that I just like wasn't ready for a different kind of book, especially because there was no romance in it. I think that was also the thing that like stopped me from getting into it. I was so on the romance train. But anyways, I forced myself to read it as I was reading it with friends, and I'm also not the kind of person who stops reading a book. It got easier at some point. It was super inspiring because the whole time the protagonist is basically conquering her fears for a whole year. She's an introvert who's trying to live as an extrovert in as many ways as she can. She just goes through each challenge and learns from it. It kind of made me want to do the same. I'm not necessarily an introvert by any means, but more so like conquer my fears. It's a very good, maybe like a 2023 resolution kind of book. If you're looking for something to inspire you to conquer fears, I think this is a good book for you. I did end up giving it a 4 out of 5 just because it was a little bit harder to get into, I think. All right, jumping back into the Bridgerton world, sort of, is the other Miss Bridgerton, the 3rd book of the Roxy's series. I'm trying to remember which one this was. Oh yes, I remember this one being entirely unexpected and also a little bit frustrating because you get glimpses of the characters throughout the books already and you have like a certain idea of them. I had a very different idea of Andrew before the book, and then the book starts, the character Poppy gets kidnapped. I'm like, where's this going? I have no idea. So I found it hard to get into, I think, because I just didn't know how it was gonna go and how it was gonna end, because would you end up marrying the man who kidnapped you or was part of kidnapping you? I don't know, I personally wouldn't. So I rated it 4 out of 5 because of that. I guess because it was just a little bit unrelatable. And then the last book of the Roxby series and the last book of, I would say, the Bridgerton series as a whole is First Comes Scandal. I loved Georgiana as a character. I mean, I wasn't completely expecting this storyline and the scandal that she was a part of. I just felt like she was like too quiet to even get into something like this, but I guess that's why it was like unexpected. I feel like there's like a little bit of scandal like dangling in each of Julia's books. It was bound to happen that one person was in like a really deep issue at some point. 5 out of 5 from me for that story. Moving on to the 12th book of the year, which was technically going to complete my 2022 goals, but obviously you know that I changed them. This was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. It was a book that I had heard people had read it and liked it a lot, so I put it on my list of books to read when I was done, finally, the Bridgerton series. I really didn't know what to do with myself after it. I just needed another romance book, really. After realizing that I really liked the enemies to lovers storyline, this was also a really good book to follow up with. And let me just tell you, it is way better than the movie. I didn't know that there was a movie when I started the book. I watched the movie immediately after the book and it does not compare in the slightest. So definitely read it before you watch it. I gave it a 5 out of 5 though. The next book is actually a book, my first book that I rated below 4 stars. Surprise, surprise. This one is The Portrait of a Thief by Grace D. Lee, and it was another book club pick with my friends. The storyline at first I was so excited for. They were going for like Ocean's 11 kind of thing. The only problem is the book was like so unrealistic, or at least the storyline was so unrealistic that I was like, when are they going to jail? Like, this book can't end in anything else other than prison. Every single chapter was just a repeat of a different kind of existential dread that you couldn't get through. And it was the same issue. Oh, am I gonna overcome this? In different characters for the whole book, over and over again. Each chapter is from a different character's perspective, which I really liked, but every single one has a moment in each chapter of the same worry. And it drags on so much because of that it was kind of hard to finish. Like, I almost didn't. I rated it a 3 out of 5. That was just because of the way it was set up. The story itself was okay, other than the fact that I was like, they're gonna get caught. But yeah, I won't spoil it or anything if you're wanting to read it. I'm sure someone might like it and not really notice the repetitiveness, but yeah. The next book, oh my gosh, thank God I followed up with this book because I loved it. It was The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. The best part about this book was the fact that I had no idea what it was about before going into it. Like, I read nothing about it. I was like, oh, 7 husbands, like that's a lot. How does that play out? It was so unexpected to what I thought. There were so many twists throughout the story. Most of them I did not see coming. At the beginning, maybe I could see some things kind of becoming clear, but oh my gosh, so many twists. So this book really keeps you on your toes. Obviously, I give it a 5 out of 5 because I loved it. The next book is the 15th book of the year, and it is The Fifth Petal by Brenonia Berry. This was another book club pick around Halloween time. We wanted to pick like a themed book, and while it's not like so Halloween-y or like horror kind of like, it was the perfect level of mystery, and I really enjoyed it. The only thing that I didn't love about it was the chapters were so long that it felt like the book went on forever, and because not a lot of stuff happens throughout them, it just dragged a bit. In the end, the storyline was satisfying because in the middle the middle to end, I like wasn't sure how it was gonna end, and I was like a little stressed about it, but in the end, it was pretty satisfying. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. The next book is the first one in a series of 3, and it is The Summer I Turned Pretty by Jenny Han. Jenny also wrote the books To the Boys I Used to Love, I think is what it's called, which is a Netflix movie series, and I never read them, but I watched the movies and really enjoyed them. I know that they've just made this into an Amazon show, which I have watched the first season of. I think there was only 1 season. I don't know, I watched them so quickly that I don't even remember. So I figured I gotta read the books before I watched the show. It was the perfect book to follow up The Fifth Petal because the chapters were really short. The story went really quick. The only thing I didn't love was how like immature Belly was, but at the same time, that was her character. I just knew that she needed some growing up to do, and the fact that there was a book 2 and a book 3, I was like, okay, I can get on board with it. And I really liked it. Definitely a great book for the summer, even though I read it in the winter. Definitely read it in the summer. It's a fun book to read. Also, it's really fun that you get to like pick who you think she's gonna end up with. I love those kinds of books. There's like a love triangle sort of thing. It's kind of teenage romance, but fun. The next book in the series is It's Not Summer Without You. I didn't know how this book was going to go because of what happens in the first book at the end of the book. I was like, how are they gonna go on? How will it be the same? And I was kind of sad that it wouldn't be. So that kind of sucked. I don't want to say because I don't want to spoil anything because I didn't know what happened in the end, in the beginning. Like, I didn't see it coming. I mean, Belly was kind of still a bit immature, but I could sense that she was growing. I could feel there was change, maybe, but she was really wishy-washy the whole time. So it made it a little bit annoying, but I was like, okay, 1 more book and it'll resolve itself. Like, it's gonna be okay. Little did I know that that's not the case for me. Anyways, I gave the second book a 5 out of 5 because it was an easy read, so I enjoyed it. The last book I didn't like as much. The last one's called We'll Always Have Summer. I did not see the story going this way at all, and the fact that it went on for so long really bothered me. So she's basically going to, how do I say this without saying too much? Basically, the whole book feels kind of like wasted on the wrong person for her, in my personal opinion. And then I was like, if there was ever a fourth book, how could the brothers even get past what happened? How could they have a good relationship in the future? They probably couldn't. It was a little hard to read. So I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5 because I just wish there was more of the story with her and the guy she ends up with. Hopefully I didn't say too much or too little throughout all of these books because I didn't want to give too much, but also go through all of them that I read. Technically, that was the last book that I read to completion. I did start Where the Crawdads Sing, which I really thought I would read fully, but because I got into Vlogmas and I was so busy, I stopped reading halfway through. I don't even know if it's halfway through, maybe a third of the way through. And so I want to finish reading it. I definitely see the problematic aspects of the book, at least that I've heard of. There's some controversy with the author, but then also some portrayal of characters are not the best. If you want to get a full sense of what I'm talking about, look it up. Some racist character portrayals, definitely. But I want to finish the book. It is definitely a gripping read. I'm enjoying it so far, but it's something to think about. I mean, look up any of the trigger warnings of all the books because, you know, each book has their own nuances and things you might not want to read about. Just putting that out there. There is a movie coming out, or has already come out. I don't even know. But I really wanted to read the book before I watched the movie. But yeah, those are all the books that I read in 2022. I'm proud that I met the goal. Now, time for my 2023 reading goals for the year. I haven't yet gone into Goodreads and actually set my challenge for the year, so I'm gonna do that now. To ensure that I meet the goal, I think I'm gonna put 20 as my reading goal for 2023, but I'm hoping secretly that I actually read 22 books. But yeah, 20 books for 2023 sounds good to me. But I'll also show you some of the books that I'm thinking about for this next year. So first on my list, obviously, Where the Crawdads Sing. I'm excited to finish that book, but some other books I've had on my hold list forever is People We Meet on Vacation. I really want to read that book. Another one on the list for a while has been Red, White, and Royal Blue, as well as It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. And then I also really want to read The Testaments by Margaret Atwood. She was the one who wrote Handmaid's Tale. I read that in university and I've also been watching the show. The reason I haven't read the second book was because I know that it gives things away, kind of, because it's set kind of after the show has gotten to, and I almost didn't want to like spoil things for myself, but in the end I kind of have accidentally read little spoilers here and there, so I figured, you know what, at this point I want to know what happens. If you have any book recommendations for me that you think, based on the books I've read already or think I would enjoy, definitely leave them down below. I'd love to know what you think I should read or what your favorite book from 2022 is from your reading list. But yeah, that is it. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please don't forget to give it a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and I hope you reach all your reading goals for 2023. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.